great. But there are certain verses that I would be referring from the Bible to, because that's what I believe in. Those are the verses that make a lot of sense to me and convict me, convict my heart. I will be using those principles to illustrate some very important principles and commands that God Himself has given in the context of relationships, and more importantly, in the context of marriage. And so, just as a housekeeping issue, kindly keep your microphones mute whenever you're able to. Whenever you want to ask a question towards the end of this presentation, you can unmute and ask your questions. But if you have any question you want to right away ask before moving to the next point, please include that in the chat box so that we can make a note of it. And I'm going to request Sarah if you can write down those questions or put them in a separate PPT so that we can display them later on and try to answer those questions as well. Thank you. So going on, marriage matters. Before we go on to this topic of marriage, I want to touch upon just for a slide on the gift of marriage and the gift of singleness. The first aspect is to realize that both marriage and singleness are gifts from God. They are God's gifts for people in different circumstances. In fact, Apostle Paul would say in this book from the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, it is good for them to stay unmarried. He's writing this letter to the church and he's addressing the unmarried people. He's saying it's good for you to stay that way. And it's interesting that the word good from the original Greek language can also be translated as beautiful. In a way, he's saying it is beautiful, it is legitimate, and it is beautiful to remain single if that's what your gifting is. And so when the Bible speaks about gifts, it talks about marriage and singleness. One is not inferior to the other. But when the Bible speaks about gift, this word charisma or charis, God's grace, it always refers to the ability God gives to build up someone else. That is how the gift operates. In the process of building up someone else using your ability, using your God-given gift, you also meet the purpose of your existence, purpose of your living, purpose that God has given to you as an individual or to you as a married couple. And so gifts are never given for personal satisfaction. They are also not given for personal pleasures or for selfish use. So whenever you see the word gift in the Bible, in 1 Corinthians 12 and Romans 12, Ephesians 4, 1 Peter 4, they all talk about these gifts given for the common good, to build up a community, to build up people. And so marriage and singleness in that sense are also gifts given to individuals so that they can use that gift to build up someone else. So if singleness is indeed a gift, then we should find ways, he or she who is single should find ways to bring honor to God and find ways to serve others in their singleness. If one's gift is marriage, then we need to find how can I use my marriage as a safe place, as a place where a family is safely brought up, where a place where people find refuge and can be encouraged in our family, in our marriage. And so these are the questions that need to be answered. Of course, in a marriage, even more basic than that is how can I lay down my life for my spouse? How can I respect and love and continue to adore my spouse in my marriage? That's another big aspect which we will dig into later on in the slides as well. So the question is, how can your gift of singleness or marriage be used to honor God and serve others? Secondly, singleness could be for a season or it could be for life. There are some people who say, I prefer to be single for this substantial time of my life because I feel it frees me to do the things that I really want to do. I know this brings honor to God. I want to travel and serve and whatever reasons you may want to for your singleness. It can be for a season, or you could be the kind of a person who says, marriage might not necessarily be for me. It is probably for life. I'm going to be single. And it's very important to realize that in our culture, in India, the single life is frowned upon. And sometimes not really encouraged. I understand that from a cultural perspective, marriage has a higher value. But when we look at it from God's perspective, we look at and say it's a choice that the person makes based on their giftedness. Sometimes pushing a person who's gifted to be single into marriage can probably do more harm than good. And so let's not push young adults, or let's not push divorcees or widows or widowers to remarry because they would probably like to be single for a season in their life, or probably for life itself. We'll have to wait and see and pray and have those conversations with them to help them decide on their future as well. Also, the singleness that Paul talks about is neither a stress-free life nor a life of misery. We've heard this, right? Oh, you have no bothers in this world, man. You're not yet married. So basically assuming that single people have no stress. Well, think again. Marriage has a different kind of stress. Singleness probably has a different kind of stress too. One might not understand the other. Nor is singleness a life of misery. And we have this as well. Oh, she is 35 years old. She must be feeling so miserable that she's not yet married. We'll have to look at that and say, no, it's from your perspective. Because you are gifted for marriage, you probably think that she or he is miserable in their singleness. Let's give room for people to grow either in their singleness or in their relationship with the opposite sex so that they can get married when the time comes. The giftedness that Paul is talking about, because he was himself single, he was talking about the freedom he had to concentrate on a life of ministry in a way that married men or married people cannot. And so, like another author said, singleness is not a bleak winter waiting for the spring of marriage to arrive. It's neither a bleak winter nor a time where people are very miserable. And so, like Paul says, singleness is not only legitimate, but it is beautiful as well. And so in your singleness, in your time of singleness, I would urge you to realize that God is nurturing you to grow and to be fruitful in the life of others, in the life of your own family perhaps, and in the life of others. And so use this time to know God, to grow in the love for Jesus, to fall in love with Jesus, to learn how to serve, to minister, to encourage someone else, and to be fulfilled and satisfied with Christ himself. You can take that satisfaction, that fulfilled life into your marriage. Take that quality of life into your marriage when that season comes, when you are ready to be married. And then you would realize that there are more opportunities for you to have a healthier marriage than not. Tim Keller, the author of this book, The Meaning of Marriage, makes this warning. He says, if single Christians don't develop a deeply fulfilling love relationship with Jesus, then they will put too much pressure on their dream of marriage. Take that as a point to consider. And if you're a single person tonight, I urge you to develop a meaningful relationship with Jesus so that you do not put pressure on your marriage to derive meaning and satisfaction. There is a different kind of satisfaction, a different kind of fulfillment and companionship that you experience in marriage, which also adds a dimension of meaning in your life, which we will also touch upon in the next few slides. In your singleness, develop the virtue of humility. We always say this to single people, who are wanting to get married, but sometimes you see them and you realize, if this guy gets married, he's probably going to be putting a huge amount of pressure on this woman, on this girl who's going to come into his life because of certain attitudes. And so we urge young people to develop virtues of humility, to develop virtues of sacrifice, servanthood, so that you can take that quality into your marriage as much as you can, so that your home will be healthy as well. So, having said about singleness, we want to go into the next slide. But before we go into the next slide, I'm going to do a poll. And so I'm going to ask Arvind if you can open up poll number 1. Just a question for you to answer, just a simple question. Why have you chosen to attend this webinar? Why have you chosen to attend this webinar? So you should see the poll on your screen right now. So choose one answer and submit. You have 30 seconds to fill up this, and then we're going to have the results published. So Arvind, when it's 30 seconds, you can just stop the poll and publish the results. Okay, let's look at the results now. Excellent. I want to know the biblical foundations for marriage, and I want to enrich my marriage and family. Take the top points. And of course, second is I want to know what I'm doing right and doing wrong. Well, no one chose my spouse asked me to. Is your spouse next to you? I don't know. But anyway, I'm glad that you have this desire to enrich and to know the foundations of the marriage. That's exactly what you would receive if you continue today and for the next 3 weeks, some enriching times with the scripture, with God, with resource people who have actually walked this journey longer than I have to equip us with tools to have a enriching, exciting married life. Thank you for doing that poll. Let's move to the next slide. So, for those who have been gifted in marriage, the question is why marriage matters. And to answer that question, there are 4 answers. There are not 4 limited answers. There could be more. But I find that these 4 are very important to consider when you look at marriage. The wellness of an individual, involving both the physical and psychological wellness of an individual, lies in the health of his marriage. In fact, the whole idea of companionship as God instituted, he started off by saying it's not good for man to be alone. And so he created a helper, a completer of his personality, of his whole self. And therefore, when man and woman come together in matrimony and marriage, there is a sense where there is a potential for physical wellness, for physical strength and health individually, and for emotional and psychological wellness for individuals emotionally as well. So when the marriage does not work the way it's intended, you could see breakdown on exactly these 2 aspects of wellness of an individual. Emotionally broken people, physically weak people, because the marriage is not working. So when we have a healthy marriage, you can be assured of emotionally and physically good life, provided you don't get a coronavirus or something like that, which is pretty much out of our control. But it's proven to be a health-giving institution for people. A second reason is to build healthier families and to build safer homes. That's what we want, right? We want people to feel safe. We want children to be raised up in an atmosphere of respect, love, acceptance, adoration, and the third point leads from there. And we are now gifting these children, this next generation, the legacy of love and respect that they can take into their marriage and hopefully pass it on for future generations. That's the way it was intended. And at the end of the day, a good marriage or good marriages in a society gives lesser crime. There is lesser crime in societies that have good marriages. There is lesser violence. There is lesser torture. There's lesser rape culture, which is a big problem in India, as you can see. One of the reasons we need to really have stronger marriages and teach this strong marriage principles to other people, other friends of ours, is so that we can one day, as we are praying today, that India will be a safe society. That we will build a society that is safe and export that to different parts of our nation as well. So those are the reasons why marriage matters. We're going to be touching upon as well. So the topics going to be covered in today's session are commitment and unity in marriage. In that we will see developing trust and intimacy, challenges and opportunities, and foundations for a healthy marriage. And then we will at the end see what is nurturing love, what are the strengths of women and strengths of men that can be used to nurture the marriage and what are the essential elements in a marriage. So before going there, I have requested three friends of mine who have been married for more than one couple is married for 2.5 years, Nishant and Sailaja, who are here. Nishant will be sharing with us his thoughts about these two questions. How do you define trust and intimacy in a marriage? What opportunities do you have to create to strengthen your commitment and unity in your marriage? Nishant and Sailaja are very close to us. They are part of our church. They are part of our house church as well. And I had the privilege of conducting their marriage ceremony and brought them together. We've been enjoying knowing Sailaja for the last 2.5 years as well. And they have grown in love with one another over the last 2.5 years, and they have some interesting experiences. They have been blessed with a child just about a year ago. And so we would like to hear from you, Nishant, your thoughts on these two questions.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. I hope everyone can hear me clear and loud.
Yes.
Loud and clear. All right. So thanks, Anand, for the introduction, and we are also blessed in so many ways, I would say. And I accepted this particular session to share just because God has blessed us so much in our marriages, and I just want to be of some help to people who are single or who are already married, uh, to showcase that how can we be honoring to God in our marriage lives. So I'll just quickly start since we have a very limited time. So how do we define trust and intimacy in marriage? So I mean, we have the privilege. I mean, I have the privilege to have Pennington family of also joined because the first session that I've attended on marriage is with them, and the first thing that comes to my mind, especially on how to define trust and intimacy, is to actually understand if you're a single, if you're going through a counseling session, is to understand what a sacrifice means. How do you uh, would you be able to able to sacrifice for the other person? Uh, I just want to look at a quick verse from Ephesians 5 25 to 33. Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. In the same way, husbands should love the wife as their own bodies. He who loves his wife love himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. So, I mean, as single person, you can do a lot of things, and there are a lot of fantasy stuff that you would be wanting to do. Say, for example, lavish spendings and spending time on games. But as a married person, that you want, if you want to commit yourself into marriage, there's a lot of sacrifice that it would be involving, and uh, you have to see what is good for the family. So sacrifice is one thing that is very much required if you're getting into marriage, and especially if you are a single person and you fantasizing having a bike with a single seat, you might want to reconsider if you're planning to get married. So that's one thing. But on a higher note, on a higher calling of sacrifice would be to love the other person as yourself. Just as I read the verse, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes. Just as Christ, you have to consider the other person as your own self, and you'll have to put the other person first, foremost. I mean, you have to put the other person first uh, instead of you. And also, if you're planning to get committed or get into marriage, you have to think about the languages as well. It's an interesting one. You have to start losing the I, and you have to start using we. I is more selfish as we consider it. So there's a lot of learnings involved. I mean, especially in marriages. The first one I told you already, it's sacrifice. The second one, it's being truthful. Truthful to whatever extent it may be. Truthful is being something like, if you're getting into marriage, if you want to tell something that's very much big, that might hinder your marriage in the future or after getting married also, you'll have to be open about it even before marriage, and you'll have to share things that that'll even break your marriage even after you're married. So be truthful about everything and open about it. And if you look at my situation, I was engaged once, and the engagement was called off. And before getting married to Shailaja, I had to to tell the truth to the family. And in spite of all that, the family is God believing family, and that's why they accepted even after telling the truth. So if it is God willing, the marriage will happen. If it is not God willing, the marriage will not happen. So trust in God. That's what I would say if you want to get into marriage. Because apart from God, you'll not get anything. If God does not allow it, you'll not get into it, because it's my personal experience out of marriage, and I've been through it. So the next one is respect. I mean, to have a trustworthy marriage, or a marriage which is having intimacy, you need to have respect to the other person. Give the amount of respect that I mean, the whole respect that the other person deserves. Even if you're not able to, just do that, because it'll help you in the long run. It'll strengthen your marriage in so many ways. And the other one is encourage each other. Encouragement comes in a lot of ways, because you do not want to put the other person down, because it will not help you in any way. Say, for example, you do something and the person will not encourage you. You don't try anything else. That's how it works. You encourage, and the person flourishes in any work that your spouse does. Um, so I want to encourage you with these thoughts, and at the same time, love unconditionally. There are times me and my spouse have gone into conversations when we have tough with few things, and we at times we come up like, I don't love you and all that, but I have the prime example of us is Jesus Christ, and He loved unconditionally. That is our focus. A Christ-centered marriage always focuses on unconditional love. So, Christ died for us. He might not like our ways or the things that we have done, but He never stopped loving us, and that's the core of a marriage itself. And I would say love unconditionally, even though it hurts at times, but love actually helps you in getting through a lot of hurdles at times of trouble, and be helpful to the other person in every way that is possible. So I've listed down few things: sacrifice, be truthful, respect, encourage, love unconditionally, helpful one another. So these defines the trust, and these things help you to trust one another more than anything, and it also brings you the intimacy in the marriage. If you fix all of these stuffs in your marriage, sacrifice, be truthful, and all that. So it also brings, if you do all that, the intimacy automatically comes into place. So I encourage you, all of you, to do that. And I want to move on to the second question, which is, what opportunities do you have or create to strengthen your commitments and unity in your marriage? So the opportunity that you can create or to strengthen your commitment and unity in your marriage is to have partnership in everything. Except for work, you can have partnership in everything. Just like going for a person's house, or meeting friends, or going outside. Be a partner. Involve your spouses in everything. That actually strengthens your marriage like anything. And the person will actually start trusting you in everything. Be open about everything. Be partnering in everything. It helps you and your spouse. It gives a comfortable space to your spouse to trust you in everything, and you'll not have any hindrances or trouble, like she'll be questioning and all that. She'll be okay with everything that you do. She knows you in and out. So be partnering with everything. The other one is take equal responsibility in marriage, which is like a lot of work, household works, taking care of a child at times when needed. And when we were initially married, we ha- we were actually praying. We prayed every day. Even when we are engaged, we prayed throughout. Even to this day, we pray at nights, uh, so that our marriage. should be strengthened in every way possible. Our prayer is the only thing that keeps us moving. And at times when we go through struggles or something like that, we do check-ins every month when we are initially married. Every month we do a check-in. We go to a coffee shop or something like that. For the first 8 to 9 months before she was conceived, we used to check in. We used to do a lot of introspections. What went wrong and why did you do like this? And we used to introspect on each other and take the output of it, and we try to build on it. So that actually helped us to be more committed to our relationship, and the unity is so much stronger even now. And even though we have not done that in the past few days after our after she has given birth to Arya, so we were not able to do it, but that was a very a beautiful thing that we did. We spent time in the coffee shop trying to jot down things, what we did and what went wrong with this, that, and all that. That really helped, and help us to uh, get a stronger uh, commitment into the marriage, and the unity of the marriage just flourished like anything. So yeah, these are things that I want to share, and thank you for the opportunity, Anand.
Thank you, Nishan. Thank you for sharing. You brought up some very important and crucial points about trust, intimacy, and commitment and unity. Thank you very much. The second couple I want to introduce to you is our dear friends McLeod and Sujata. They have been married for actually 16 years. Last September 30th was their 16th wedding anniversary. They have been a great example of persistent couple amidst trials and struggles that they have gone through individually and as a family as well. So their insight and their inputs on this is a valuable, very valuable information that all of us can use and apply in our marriages. So on to you, McLeod. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Anand. I mean, it's fine without the camera, right? So you can. Uh,
Yeah, your choice, McLeod.
hey.
Anything's okay.
Okay, so anyway, thanks so much, Anand. I think the assumption that when you're married for too long and everything is great sometimes is a faulty one, right? We keep learning even now, and we do have certain conflicts on agreeing on certain things. But I think when you say how do you define what is trust and intimacy? Um, I think one very obvious definition for trust is um, telling something very deep about yourself and feeling safe, still feeling safe about it, right? That there is no sense of rejection or being betrayed, uh, you know. And I think sometimes the problem is we come in from different baggages from our homes, and we see how certain things were protected, how our fathers and mothers have protected themselves in fights, in arguments, and we bring those all into our current marriages. And I think how men process the expectation of trust is sometimes different from how women process the expectation of trust. And that was initially a big learning even for me, that uh, what I see as certain behaviors of trust. Sometimes your spouse may not have that understanding, and so it's a very important exercise to express deeply of where you feel you're feeling betrayed or you're feeling unsafe in that kind of a behavior. Um, and also intimacy for that matter, right? Intimacy is more knowing about you deeply and loving you and desiring you. And here again, even intimacy, sometimes how men see intimacy is different from how women see intimacy. Um, we broadly use the word love, but how are we expressing that love and how we think our spouses are experiencing that love is a totally different thing, right? I can imagine. I mean, initially, remember that. So I came up from watching my mom give a lot of gifts to my dad, and that was a very strong image of expressing how do you give your gifts. So initially, when I was on my trips and all, I used to buy something surprising for my wife. But when I would buy for her, she wouldn't like the choice, you know. And so somehow I would interpret it as being rejected, and she doesn't appreciate these small gestures of love. But again, not being mindful of her color choice, I was just so caught up in my expression of love. Whereas sometimes you have to also understand what makes the other person really happy, right? What brings joy in that person, and she does. She appreciate me a lot. But that choice, that color, the texture, you know. So I think there needs to be an understanding of how do you communicate uh, love, right? And for me, and even Suja for that matter, I think we've come to understand that each one has their own. I think we all know this, right? That 5 languages of love. Uh, for some people, it is through quality time of communication. For some people, it is more through physical touch. For some people, it's a lot of words of affirmation um, that builds that level of closeness. For some people, it's really about getting involved in the mundane, boring chores of life. So, for that matter, if I'm all about quality time and not in the kitchen, which quite often is I'm guilty of. Um, and so this is how probably my wife would interpret. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. And these are small things that play a big in our marriages, right? How do you build intimacy in a way that the other person is looking as a need uh, for a kind of love expression? Uh, so for us, it has worked where we're trying to learn these languages of love. Um, but one also important area to look at is, sometimes we all try to still hide certain disappointments, certain areas where we're not all that we feel safe to open up completely. And when we don't know how to confront or talk these issues, sometimes we go into a very, they call it the passive aggressive behavior, right? Something I'm not happy about, but I don't know how to talk about it. And so I will be aggressive in my approach, but I will also same time be passive. I will withhold intimacy. I will withhold communication. And these all add up to uh, trust factors, intimacy factors. They again complicate issues. But I think understanding the differences in each of us, understanding our personalities, understanding what baggages you carry, and understanding that sometimes uh, that is that is in the past, right? You have to learn new behaviors, new approaches as you deal with your spouse. So that's just generally on trust and intimacy definition. But what opportunities do you have to create to strengthen? I think one thing that has really helped us initially was to do a couples assessment test. We did a couples assessment test to say what needs we are not able to communicate very well. Through the survey, we actually found what our real inner needs were, and we went through that together and say, hey, so this, according to the survey, this is our inmost secret needs that we have. And so my spouse understands certain needs of mine, um, um, and I understand my wife's needs. So that has helped greatly to say, okay, to talk about these issues openly, right? And another area is also to look at certain personality tests, because yeah, uh, one spouse can be very extrovert, one can be very introverted, and those create some conflicts sometimes, right? One person can be all about, his whole world can be in the internal mind, his thoughts, his processes, and the other spouse can be all about outside, external living, right? Uh, and it's good to know what kind of a person you are, and what kind of what kind of approach you immediately uh, go to, right? But in your marriage, I think you have to stretch yourself to go to your unpreferred styles of relating. Um, Sometimes, if I am very prone to withdraw as a person, or I'm not a very conversant guy, I don't engage in a lot of conversation, then I think we ought to, like Nishant was talking about sacrifice, right? Learn to stretch ourselves to use a style that really goes into conversation. And the other thing is also, I think every couple should read one marriage book together. I think sometimes that's a missing piece in many marriages, that either the husband is trying to make it work or the wife is trying to make it work. And there's a lot of insight that someone wants to proceed with, but there's just no cooperation to go together. And some nice scripture which says, no, if two cannot agree to go somewhere, can they really go there? All right. So one thing is to make plans together. I think goals for marriages is a big thing. Generally, couples don't engage in actual goals. How do you build joy? How do you get involved? How do you build your communication styles? How do you bring a lot of adventure and excitement in your marriage? How do you build your physical intimacy? That's a big one too for many couples also. And how do you lessen your time with social media so that you create more time for each other? And sometimes many marriages, once children come, right, their lives become all about children, and they lose that touch with each other's needs, time for each other, time to bring that kind of one-to-one deepness in their life. And in Indian culture, that's so easy to happen, that once kids comes, mothers and fathers can be all around about children. And so I think there's a need for, child proofing your marriage in one sense. And I think the best example for your children to see is how excited you are for each other, how much you love for each other. One other part is, I guess, there needs to be a lot of self-care. Even as you learn about talk about this gift of marriage, it's about really giving yourself for the other person, but also taking care of yourself in such a way that you are strong for the marriage, right? If you're a person who is constantly bombarded with your own, let's say, whatever's happening to you, and you're bogged down, you're not taking care of your physical health or your mental health, your ability to give yourself for the family gets hampered. Yourself for your wife gets hampered, or your husband gets hampered, or your children get hampered. And I think these are all important things as you factor how to give the best of yourself for the family. So a little amount of self-care is also important, I would think. And so I'll wrap up with that, these thoughts. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, McLeod. Thank you for sharing very vital points as well. The last person I'm going to call, in fact, Rex and Margarinda. Most of you would know them as well. Rex has been my friend for the last 150 years, right? Sorry, 30 years. Since 1990, I've known him, and we've been good friends. Rex and Margarinda married back in 1998, about 22 years of married life. So we've been seeing 3 years marriage, 15 years marriage, and now 22. In fact, both their girls, Danielle and Vanessa, have also flown away. They have their careers they're working towards, and so it's almost like an empty nest syndrome sometimes for them when they are. Before the coronavirus came, of course. So it'll be interesting, Rex, to hear your take on how you define trust, intimacy, and how you do commitment and unity in your marriage.
Thank you, Anand. Very cleverly, you asked me to do this, and also very nicely, you kind of rubbed it in, by telling me that I'm going to ask this question to 3 different levels of, married, couples, and, saying that you're in the bracket of 22 years or 20 years above. So, thank you. I'm just. Trust and intimacy, to think that trust is just a statement of belief that 2 people make to each other, that they will love and care for the other, especially it's time we get married. The famous, do you take this woman to be your wife, and will you cherish and love and take care of her? I do, So we think it's just that, but it's more than that. In fact, trust will, either grow or diminish as it is tested over time. And in our case, It has grown, though we've struggled in, in a part of our life. But I can tell you that trust is something that we learn and we grow as we engage with each other on so many things in life, as we deal with issues, as we have our wonderful moments, good moments, not so good moments, challenges, difficulties. But one thing I do know is that in all of these situations, if we keep showing up, if we keep coming to each other, and I'm here for you, I'm with you, no matter what, trust grows. And that's something we have discovered. Um, Margrinda has seen, so much of me. And there were times where she could have easily said things that, what's happening? Where are we? I thought you said, you love me. And I could have also said some of the similar things sometimes, because this is not the person that I, thought, I'm married to. I mean, we've discovered that it's not, trust doesn't get destroyed, or you don't lose trust in a person, or you don't, stop believing in a person just because they don't measure up to what your expectations of them. as as long as the person is able to see that what you promise, that you will love them and care for them, and that you're going to be there for them no matter what. And this, I believe, is how I would define trust. As far as intimacy is concerned, intimacy may mean different things to different people, but there are a few core elements that I think are important. Intimacy in a marriage is connecting with, your partner physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. Physically, I don't mean just sexually, but I think um, there are times in marriage we touch is so important. Mekla talked about that, and sometimes just holding each other, just, or somebody is just, either of us, either Margarita or me, there are times when we just so overwhelmed, and we can, the other, person can see that, we're struggling, and just touching us, just holding us, that means a lot. Just being there with us, physically, emotionally. I'm really very, very thankful that, I can share things. And even Margarita can share things with me, which she knows and I know. Though at the moment, we may blurt out certain things when they share, but we don't tear each other down. We don't run, each other into the ground. It's not a battle, in that sorts, but we are there to, empathize, to sympathize with each other. And we've done that over the years, 22 years. And it's just, beautiful that we have learned to share things that we would never share with anyone else. But the support, the trust is all there because we are free to share with each other. And I think sharing with each other honestly does help in intimacy. The third one is intellectually. Unfortunately, in our society, I've seen this over the years, where when a woman speaks, or a wife speaks, let me make it more, precise. When a wife speaks, generally the husband or the men around will quickly try and cut in, and say, okay, yeah, okay, keep quiet. Kind of like, the woman is, you don't know what you're talking about. And I think that's a big mistake, and that destroys intimacy. And I think accepting the person and allowing the person to speak, engaging with the person, with your partner on things about life. Um, we don't talk about politics because both of us hate politics, but we talk about other issues in life. We enjoy some conversations, about things that are happening in the world today. Um, so sharing at a level where we are able to see what the other person is really like, and how much they know and how much they can understand, so that their contribution to each other is there. Otherwise, it can be one-sided, as like I mentioned earlier, where, in our society, men think that they know everything, and but in our case, we've really, grown in that, and we understand each other, and there are so many things that I've learned in our conversations, Margarita and myself. I've learned I can look at life differently. I mean, there are, different ways to look at this, to view this. And most importantly, spiritually, if there's no spiritual connection, if we are not connected to Christ, if we are not connected to studying God's word, if we are not connected to praying, not just for each other, but with each other, and to confess, there's been a part of my life, in our life, that we were not praying or reading the Bible together. I mean, we pray individually. And I know for sure that those were the times that we struggled a lot. But thankfully, we got that back, and we are enjoying the intimacy of praying together. We don't do big mega Bible studies together, but we do, share very briefly. So much so, whenever our kids are around, they join in too. And I'm glad, I'm glad for this, sorry, however it may sound, in a way, I'm glad for this pandemic, because we're getting to share, our kids, for some extra time, which we thought we would not be able to. And so it's been amazing as we share every night, before we go to bed, that each of us, we have, we share something from the Bible, and we pray together. And that's something that, as a couple, Margarita and myself, we take very seriously, more than ever now. So that's as far as intimacy, trust and intimacy. Opportunities. The question you asked me was, what are some of the opportunities or ways we, have developed or see or do to grow deeper in our commitment? Ours are very practical, except, the first one I said, praying. The first one, I mentioned that already, but we pray and study the Bible together, and that's the most important, like I said. But there are three other things that I want to share, which are very practical, and it may sound funny, it may sound, but that's what I think, which has enabled us and continues to enable us to grow closer with each other. And so both of us like different, kinds of cooked food. Okay, we are foodies, and so we love different types of food. And it's great that she comes from a different culture, and so we get to have Northeast cuisine, and then we have South Indian cuisine. And then also there's a splash of Anglo-Indian cuisine, so we like to cook together. And I found out that the more we do this, when we're in the kitchen together at times, it really increases our intimacy. And I really enjoyed that. And I think that's very important, way in which we grow, keep growing deeper in our commitment to each other. Also, another thing that we do is we watch the news together. Okay. Now, I don't like the news so much, but for my wife, for Margrinda, the news after dinner is a ritual. She needs to watch the news before, we sleep. So as much as I don't like, but I still sit together with her and watch the news. So watching the news, even though for me it's not my big, what do you call, interest, but for her it is. And so I'm willing to spend that time with her, to sit with her, because she'll be commenting. Now, why is this happening? Now, why is he screaming? I mean, some of our Indian news, anchors, the way they host the entire news show. So this engages a conversation. We keep talking, and we keep, sharing ideas. We keep saying things that, we end up, agreeing and disagreeing on certain things. But I find this very, very interesting way to grow in our commitment with each other. Also, I like football. Okay, so she never liked sport that much. And I like certain clubs. I try to get her to watch some of the games. They're very late, so sometimes we watch the highlights. But she can't watch a full match. She can't sit and watch a full movie because she falls asleep, or she just wants to get up and do something. She likes to do things. So, but she does sit and spend some time with me, and she's learned a little bit about football. She's learned a little bit about my favorite clubs and the names of some of the players. So much so, recently she's been talking and saying, "Now I heard this person has left this club, and I heard this, your Barcelona is not doing so well, nowadays." Now that's great, because I know it's not that she's just sitting and kind of bearing with me, but she's interested. And some of the games she has watched with me, she adds to it and says, "Oh yeah, I wish they had passed. I wish they do better next time." Something that she engages, and I'm glad for these moments, because it really helps us in our marriage. One more thing that we do, I mean, there are several other things that I can mention, but I said only I'm going to share these 4 things. And so the last thing, last way that I think we have found that, growing closer together and also, growing in our commitment with each other, is that Margrinda loves to browse on the internet. And she loves to browse, anytime she's browsing and she's looking up, ideas on home design. And so she likes to look at different, images and homes, and then she'll, ask me, "Take a look at this, this is," and so we engage on different things, and even on home design, and we plan. So much so, even we've been for the last 5 years, we've been, discussing, looking up, different home design, ideas and interior designing. And we're waiting so eagerly to move into our new apartment here on campus. Unfortunately, that's not happened yet. But fortunately, I think it's going to happen soon. whenever that is. But so we spend a lot of time. It's crazy, but we spend a lot of time, looking at and saying, "Hey, this color would be nice," or if we get this, maybe this sideboard would go very well. Maybe we can have lights like this, and we share things which may seem very trivial. We even also discuss and things. She's been dreaming of this. For me, yeah, I dream, but I don't know whether it's going to materialize. But she wants us to maybe someday build our own house in Shillong. That's a big dream, and whether or not that dream is realized in our life, but nothing stops us from looking at the net and the web and finding out and trying to say, oh, we can do this, we can build it in this way, we can paint it this way, we can have this. And so we basically share a lot of ideas, and I think in these ways we are saying to each other, I want to grow old with you. That's really helping us. And so it may sound trivial, it may seem very, hey, these are all very ordinary things, but I think it's in these ordinary things that we engage with and experience life together. We are telling each other, we are saying to each other, I'm committed for the full, complete, to the end. And this is basically from our experience, and I just hope that this helps in some way. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this with you. And maybe we'll meet sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Thank you so much for sharing. In fact, I think I can just wrap up the study for today and just go, because there's so much that the three couples or the three people have shared regarding trust and intimacy. If you've been keeping notes or writing down some of the suggestions or definitions, it's a well of a resource that we have received already. But let's just push on further, a little bit further. For those of us who are thinking, it's wonderful to hear what you are sharing, but how do I make this a reality in my life? Or how do I help my friend or colleague make this a reality in their life? How can I help people who are struggling in their marriage to find real trust and intimacy? So we're going to go forward. If you have heard from those who have spoken, you will realize that those married for any number of years, 3, 15, 22, they have their own challenges. But those who are married for a substantially longer period of time will realize that keeping commitment and keeping unity and making the marriage work requires effort, requires hard work, and keeping the family together requires diligence. And so we will say that making a marriage work, keeping a family together requires consistent effort from both the spouses. It's much like how a garden is made beautiful. Those of you who are into gardening probably enjoy this. But if you're like me, you would tell something very similar. Good grief, gardening is hard work. To keep a garden green, beautiful, flourishing requires so much of hard work and persistence. Also, to grow a healthy garden, a person requires 3 things. And I suggest that these 3 things are also what is required in a marriage, to grow a marriage. First is we need knowledge. Second, we need skills. Third, we need hard work or effort. And in the process, to get our hands dirty if needed to make the marriage work. In a marriage, how does knowledge work out? The questions to ask: whom am I marrying? What is he or she bringing from his or her family? What is he or she bringing from his or own traditional background? Why does he or she act or react the way she does in certain circumstances? Why do certain words evoke stronger reactions and negative pushbacks from her rather than certain other language or words? So this is a knowledge issue where we ask the questions to our spouse and say, why do you actually feel this way? What did I say that that upset you. You look disappointed, but help me understand. And we will come a little later as to, sometimes men don't catch it immediately. We are little thick in the head. God made us that way. We can even say it that way. But then there are certain differences in the way men process facts and situations. And we'll have to understand how a man does that, and how a woman does that, and get the knowledge from both as to why the soil is hard, that we are not able to plant the seed or make the seed grow, which is already planted. Knowledge is very important in a marriage as well. Knowledge about the other spouse. Skills is very important in a marriage. What should I learn? What should I acquire or seek help in acquiring in order to keep this commitment, to keep the unity? Now that I know what I know about my spouse, what are the special skills I should realize, I should learn and bring into the marriage that would help the family to go and grow and not aggravate my spouse or aggravate my children? What language should I speak that would communicate love and respect for my spouse? What language should I not speak around the house? And most of these learnings actually come through negative experiences. We make a mistake and then we learn and say, oh, this was not the way to do it. Because we are really not exposed to our spouse behavior patterns prior to marriage. So ask questions to your spouse. Ask questions to learn more about his or her behavior. And then finally, effort. Put in that work now that you know, now that you are learning the skills, now that you're learning how to speak, how to behave, what to ask, how to prioritize, etc. Put the hard work in as regularly as you can to ensure that you're building each other and you're building your children. Now, again, this is a process. It's a lifelong learning process. We will never get to the bottom of it, but we can always be on the road to perfection, the road to knowing and living a full, happy, married life and a family life with our families as well. And so, before marriage, usually this is how we see it. If you can think back to your pre-married days, before marriage, we usually see our spouse as a blooming, beautiful flower plant. Great aroma, such beauty, flourishing, green, and see the buds there. There is potential for more, and so we fall in love with that, and we express our love for that beauty that we see, and we can't get to get married to each other. Now, after marriage, something happens, especially after the honeymoon period. We are shown below the surface of that plant. We don't see this before marriage. We probably would see one or two dried leaves, but we'll just ignore it because the beauty is much more radiant and catches our eyes much more than the dark brown leaves. We start noticing stuff that we didn't notice before. In one sense, we are blind before marriage. We don't see everything about the person, and we wonder, what did we marry? What are those dark brown leaves that I see? Never saw them before. And soon this bewilderment or this confusion for certain people can turn to anger. We're like, this is not who I married. Why did you hide all this from me? And we start plucking one by one those dry leaves and start using them as complaints. We start saying, oh, you are irresponsible. Or you don't come back from work early enough. You don't take care of things in the house. We don't spend time enough. All these dried leaves become the things that we start plucking out and exposing and making a deal. Because the flowers and the leaves that we saw earlier are still there, but somehow our eyes are not on that. It's on the brown dried leaves that we are trying to talk about. And sometimes we say, this angers me. I wish I can rip out these leaves so that I can be happier and satisfied. Let's understand one thing, that these dried leaves and dark colored leaves that are about to fall off are a result of something someone did in their lives that has made them become dry in certain areas. If talking about a woman, if you're talking about a wife, you realize that if a girl, a lady is not treated well by her father, is not treated in an honoring way by her father, it is very hard for them to respond to the love of the husband. It's very hard for them to respond to anything that the husband says. If the husband says a negative word, a negative expression, it reminds them of their father, and they go into a shell because they have enough brown leaves just from those experiences with their father. If it's a man we're talking about, if that man has been teased all through school for his color or for his size or whatnot, if he's been teased at home or compared with anyone else, he will turn out to be an angry person. And if the wife does not have that knowledge about the husband, she might trigger him off and set him off by comparing him or saying things that would infuriate him or remind him of his past experiences before marriage. These are the ones that form the dried leaf. But if you're a little bit sensitive and sensible and you're willing to learn and adapt and be malleable, we can find out what is wrong with the plant. Now, each dried leaf, like I said, can offend us. We can say things like, you spend too much money, you are too irresponsible, you snore, or you don't do what you promise, or you push the toothpaste from the wrong end of the tube. Something as simple as that can infuriate us. And we end up saying, this is too much to handle. People end up saying, let's break it off. I can't handle these brown leaves. Or people would just say, you just live your life. Let's just get along. And I think a lot of marriages just get along without actually dealing with some of these issues. Instead, can we learn to respond out of knowledge and love by asking them, I can see that your leaves are drying. What do you need? What do we need to make this work? Where should I water? Where should I nourish you so that, yes, these dried leaves would fall. I can't hold on or change them, but at least the new leaves that are coming out would have a different color, would have some green in them. Try to find out what the other person needs to make them healthier. It's a skill. And we can't do anything about the already dried ones, but we can help grow new, green, fresh, healthy leaves. And therefore, commitment and unity in a marriage are end results of persevering love, performing certain roles and responsibilities with really good care and diligence. Your marriage, my marriage, everyone's marriage in this room today have challenges. Every marriage has got a challenge, has a set of challenges. We can use those challenges to run away or to fight, or we can use them, as the Bible would say, in all things, God works together for the good, and make sense out of the green, the brown, the black, the no water, the lots of water, and make something beautiful come out of what is existing. Because God is in the process of making all things new, and we can join that process. If a piece of dirt in the hands of a normal person is just a piece of dirt, but a piece of dirt in the eyes of the Creator is clay in the hand of the potter, and he can change it upside down, and God is the greatest potter. And therefore, the foundation for any healthy marriage is, like we said, what has been shared already by these three wonderful people. And I want to also say that in any relationship, we expect people to change. We expect the other person to change according to our liking. And in a marriage relationship too, this happens. We expect the spouse, if only she or he or they or the kids would change and begin meeting some of my expectations, I would be happier and our family would be all that it should be. We've said this at some point or the other, maybe earlier in the marriage, maybe later in the marriage, somewhere in the middle. My expectations are not being met. There's a problem with this. It's very normal to say it in the current generation, because individuality has got much more value than family or community. And so my desires, my expectations rate higher than our growth together. And so the problems from this is there is a sign of increased selfishness. I would be happier and I can make my family be all that it should be. You see where the blame is she, he, and then I want to be happy. And then it creates an unhealthy dependency, a very important, very serious problem. Why should my happiness depend on someone else changing? It's called codependency, unhealthy dependency on another person making me happy, if we enter the marriage happy, then we could be spreading happiness rather than wanting that joy, wanting that happiness, or wanting that satisfaction for me. And so be careful when we say things like this. It can show a sign of a problem. Each of these problems can be addressed through a session of counseling. Just talk to your friend about these, and they'll be able to separate our perspective as to how we can add value to the marriage without having the other person actually changing for us. And then the conversations become very distasteful, right? Uh, every conversation would be like, if only you did this, it wouldn't be this way. Or you always do this and you never change. And then the conversation goes into some other direction about the in-laws and everything else, except the actual problem is not being addressed. Imagine if each in the family thought this. If he or she will change, I would be happy. If everyone in the family thought that, no one would budge an inch. No one would move forward. And here's the irony. When we try and make efforts to change the other person, the problem actually gets worse, not better. Because it exposes all these three areas. And now we are left to deal with something deeper than what it could have been if we had seen it for what it was and dealt it like we would deal with a plant that is withering and water it and nourish it. Have you or someone in your family growing up, and I think everyone at some point in our families, or you know someone in our homes where we grew up with a father or a husband who had a foul temper? Have you been a part of such a family? Have you been a part of a family or know someone where family members call each other by names and even call their in-laws by name? Have you been a part of a family where the wife or the mother constantly complains and compares? Have you been part of a family where the children are uncared for, where you are uncared for? Or children have been violent in their behavior? Most people, in fact, even people from loving homes and happy marriage, in my own family, I can say that we have experienced this, even though I would put our family, my birth family, as a loving family, a family where there was respect and love. But we did have times where there was nagging and comparison and complaints, people calling each other names, and relatives and in-laws. There was a lot of foul anger, people being easily angered and tempers. Everyone has become part of that system at some point in their life. We have experienced these difficult times or unfulfilling relationships with our parents or with our spouse. The question is, what is the missing ingredient in a home where these are predominant? And that's the basic principle I want to address tonight. The missing ingredient is honor. The missing ingredient is honor. Honor means something that is of weight. In the original language, where it is written in Greek and in Hebrew, the word honor has its meaning of weight or value. 1 Corinthians 6:20, Paul would say, you have been bought with a price, so honor God with your body. Revelations 5:12, the angels are singing, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto God. And we give weight, we give value. In fact, the way we do it is by an expression. We say, wow, to anything that we want to give honor to. We say, wow, awesome. You know, we sing the song, right? Our God is an awesome God. What do we mean by that? It's like wow factor in the person we are honoring. Because we honor God because he's worthy of honor. And we honor particular people. When we honor particular people, we are saying that those, that who they are and what they say carries a great deal of weight. We honor such people. Who they are and what they say carries a great deal of weight with us. They are extremely valuable in my eyes. And the way we express that is by our words, by our body language. We communicate how much we honor or how much we dishonor someone. And so we talk about bringing this honor home. How can I wow my wife, or consider my wife as wow, my husband as priceless every time we see them? I mean, this looks very trite in some ways, you know, you don't have to do this every day, but find ways in your home where you can not literally say wow, but with your body language, with your words, express how much you honor your spouse. And so 1 Peter 3:7 has that, right? In the message version. Be good husbands to your wives, honor them, delight in them, because as women, they lack something of your advantages. But in the new life of God's grace, you are equal. Honor one another above yourselves, Romans 12:10 will say. In the another version, in the message version, it says, play second fiddle to one another, which means be an accompanying musician when your spouse is actually having a solo performance. That's the idea. How an accompanying musician elevates the value of the singer or the soloist by gently playing in the background hidden. That's how you bring out the value of that person and you honor them. That's the meaning of the word honor in the original language. Playing the second fiddle to make your spouse look spectacular. You know, in Indian situations, like First Peter would say, women do lack some advantages. Just like in the days of Paul, women do lack a lot of advantages. We don't have time to go into that topic, but they do lack advantages that some of the men have. How wonderful it would be if we can present an alternate model of marriage where husbands would honor their wives, thereby showing the world that that the husband and the wife are equal in every sense of that word. And so in your home, how does showing honor look like? You know, in the Eastern customs in Japan, in other Eastern countries, people with their body would bow down and hold their hands when there's any meeting, when they come across some person. Even in India, we have this wonderful culture of bowing down and saying namaste. We say vanakkam, we say things with our folded hands, which show honor. When we say namaste, we're basically saying, I honor the God that's in you. I honor the divine in you. And so it's honor is part of our culture as well. But the way we say it is, I like the way Proverbs says it, a cheerful look brings joy to the heart. Can we honor with our eyes? The way you look at your spouse conveys how much you honor her. Every day, can we take time to, again, this looks like trained behavior, but hey, start doing it, it becomes a part of you. Where you look at your spouse and your eyes brighten. In fact, the word cheerful look in another version says, a bright eyes brings joy to the heart. It's like how you look at, something like a Mercedes Benz, or if you're an antique collector, antique watches, old coins. How does your eye go when you look at something valuable? Your eyes and your mouth drop, like your eyes become big and your mouth drops, right? And so I decide on what I put value and honor on. I can look at a Mercedes Benz and say, I don't like that. I can dishonor it, or I can honor it. I can choose to honor my wife in the same way. I can choose to honor my husband in the same way. And so each husband, each wife needs to show a way to show honor to their spouse, body language, words, priorities, etc. And so this requires patience. It requires daily doses of honor. It requires habit to be formed. In fact, if you have been growing in a climate of criticism, it is highly likely that your first impulse or instinct would be to criticize your children, your wife, or your husband. And that needs to change. And finally, not finally, but in this slide, to honor someone is a decision, not a feeling. The feelings will follow. And this is why men can do this. You know, men, most of them say men are left brain, women are right brain, and science has proved that. The left brain talks about, it's a component of the brain that is responsible for making decisions, for acting upon a decision. The right is on feeling. And so men can actually decide, even before the feeling comes, to honor their spouse. You can make a decision that something or someone, especially your family members, are of high value. Make that decision today that your spouse is the highest value, and then watch the feelings come in. Because Jesus says that, right, in Matthew 6:24, 6:21, where your heart is, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What we treasure and place high value upon is where our feelings reside. This is not just true in relationship with God. This is true in any relationship, especially with my spouse. If I treasure or honor a person, the positive, warm feelings about him or her arise. It's a decision we make. And I know that to make that decision requires a lot of hard work because so many things come into our mind. Why should I make the decision? She is not worthy of it. She did not treat me right. Or he did not do this the way I wanted to. We have reasons to decide why I don't have to honor this person. But let's make a decision. And then what's the feelings come? Let's look at some of the dishonoring acts in a home. There are lists of 10 that I want to put down. You can read it. Ignoring or degrading another person's opinion, being occupied with television or phone when someone is communicating with us, joking about someone's weaknesses, criticizing harshly, being judgmental, treating our in-laws as unimportant, not appreciating kind deeds, distasteful habits that we do in front of the family, overcommitting to outside projects than work in the house, power struggles that leaves one person feeling dominated, unwilling to admit that we are wrong or to ask forgiveness. So here's the next poll. It's based on these 10 points. So Arvind, if you can bring out poll number 4. In your home, what do you think are the 3 most disrespectful acts? There are 3 acts, so you can choose any 3 from those lists. List of 10. Take about 45 seconds. You can read it, maybe even a minute. It's important that your family realizes that you consider these as disrespectful in your home. Another 15 seconds. The 5 maybe. Please submit your answers so we can get the whole answers on the screen. Arvind, I hope you got enough responses. So you can close the poll and put the results on the screen. A big 60% on being occupied with TV and phone, and a big 41% on ignoring or degrading another person's opinion and vice versa. I think everything is quite about power struggles, and unwillingness to admit that we are wrong. You can see this is just a survey of 30 plus people in this meeting, but these are some of the important issues that are actually creating dark, dried up leaves in the garden of your marriage. If we can ask questions to our spouse, these questions, and say, I'll use my wife's name. Esther, what are the 3 acts that you consider very disrespectful that I can change in our house? And then list down these questions and then maybe make the change there. It's very simple once you have the knowledge and then you have the desire to make that change and then both do it simultaneously. There is such joy in that as well. Thank you, Arvind. Please bear with me. We will go another 10 minutes into the clock. So it's going to be 7:03. Kindly bear with me for another 10 minutes. Let's finish this and then we will conclude for the day. Like I said, nurturing, the next part of the session is nurturing love. Once we know how to honor someone and we realize what dishonors a person, next is we start nurturing the person by honoring them the way it is supposed to be done. But in that context, we have to find the difference between the men and the women. Men's brain connections, you can see there, the fiber pathways in the man, the blue zones of the two hemispheres. A man thinks this way. The pathways run up and down, back and forth in one hemisphere. So you can see the right hemisphere, it's all vertical up and down and crossways and this ways, but it's only within the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere goes up and down, but only within that. There is no overlap, there is no interconnection. And so a man is very logical. He thinks one way, he's very practical, action-oriented. But a woman, on the other hand, is much more creative. Look at the way her lines zigzag across the hemispheres. Now, I have not done too much of study into this brain structure of human beings, but I've learned this, that women can combine facts with logic. They can combine facts with feelings. They can combine logic and intuition. They are better at multitasking, whereas men are very good in logic, in facts, in taking practical action, quick decisions. And therefore, we see, just to rush through the slide, we see a great complementary pair that is meant to work together. Two brains that cannot live in isolation of the other. They would be incomplete, they would make mistakes, but they need the other to fulfill their gap. And so when a woman is asked to do a certain job that the man is asked to do, the woman would use intuition, which the man seldom does not, gut feeling we call it, and then their response would be slightly different, sometimes even more accurate than what the man concludes. Women attach feelings to anything that they do. Facts and feelings are combined, and therefore they remember things better. The moment you attach an emotion or a feeling to any act, you tend to remember that forever. And then sometimes you wonder, right? How do you remember this thing that happened a gazillion years ago? 10 years back, this happened. She has attached a feeling to that activity or that action. She will never forget the name. She will not forget the details, the color, the smell, the shape. Everything is there embedded because of that zigzag coordination. One of the reasons I think why women do well in schoolings, we wonder, right, why in India girls get a lot of first ranks or they do well, better than boys. It's because they attach feelings and emotions to their facts. They remember things better and clearer, and they can produce it as well. So I look at a complementary pair here, just like everything in creation. You look at everything in creation, you look at it as a complementary pair. Heaven and earth complements. Day and night complements. You see, sea and dry land complements. Man and woman complements. The design of God is a complementary pair that is meant to work together. And therefore, in that, husbands especially, because we are good in fact finding, love involves this important aspect of fact finding, asking the question to the woman, to the spouse, to the wife, what is not working in our marriage? What is needed to add value to our family? To have that conversation is very important. I think all the couples that shared have had that conversation to build that healthy family. And so the strength of the woman is to develop the ability to develop and sense a good relationship. Men, please, let's use that to draw out of her, where we can ask these questions. In the last slide, you'll have 2 questions or 3 questions you can ask one another. Questions like, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being bad and 10 being very good, where do you rate our relationship? Or where would you like to see our relationship go? Women would tend to be more honest with that than men. And men can also answer that question, because the strength of the man is the ability to make a decision and to add strength and to build a healthy relationship from the inputs that he receives from the woman and from the children as well. And so what we're going to do right now is going to stop right there, not go into the essential elements of marriage. We will cover this another day, but I have 2 more polls that I want to take before we conclude for the day and call it a night. So let's do poll 2. Arvind? So this is a question for all the wives or to-be wives, if you're there. You can answer this. I love it when my husband, and there are 6 options there, Husbands, pay attention. So this is their answer, or the predominant answer in the women, as they're answering, I love it when my husband. Take 20 seconds, one answer only. All right, let's close the poll. Wow, 62% spends time listening to me. And equal 15% spends more time with our children and praises me for a job well done, plans a surprise vacation. So, excellent. Husbands, I hope we are listening to what is being said out there. Ask this question to your wife. What do you love when I do? What do you love it when I do? Do you love it when I spend time listening to you, or what would you appreciate if I did more often around this house? Phrase a question, an open-ended question where they can actually answer it honestly. Second question is for the husbands. Poll number 3. Twenty seconds. Okay. Hope we received enough results for everyone. Wow, hugs me or holds my hand is number 1 at 55%, and cooks my favorite dish, 18%. Again, these are the questions the wife can ask. What do you love when I do? What is it about me that you love that I can contribute to the family? And phrase it in such a way that she can actually ask these, answer these questions, give her choices, have a conversation with her, because once we know what actually touches a person's heart, their spirit, and their mind, we start honoring them by fulfilling those desires. You see, again, it goes back to honor. If your husband loves certain things that you do, the more you do that, the more you are touching that part of his, should we say, happiness figure, and the more your marriage is going to be a healthier place to raise a family and have people over. It's such a blessing to have husband and wife united and together in their marriage. So, I'm not going to go into the other essential elements in a marriage. We will have it for another day. Very important, but time has not helped us today. So, no problem. Do this at your home as a home assignment. Ask your spouse on a scale of 1 to 10, 0 being terrible and 10 being great, where would you like our relationship to be? I think everyone would say about 9 or 10. No one's going to say 2 or 3. That's easy. Then again, ask your spouse on a scale of 1 to 10 overall, where would you rate our marriage today? Do this separately. You will be surprised that sometimes the men would rate it slightly higher than the women. And men, let's listen to the women, because they add not just facts, but they have added emotions and some prior history and knowledge about your marriage, which can add to your that scale there. But that's not the most important question. Ask each other, as you look at our relationship, what are some specific things we could do the next 6 weeks that would move us closer to a 10? Take a picture of this, or we'll be sending the slides to you in the groups. But this is very important. Do it this week so that you can assess your marriage and start working on it, asking those questions, asking questions that would honor them and to make those leaves green again. That's our entire exercise for this seminar as well. The next couple of weeks, we are going to be talking about marriage building. We're going to touch upon all those different topics mentioned there. And we would be very honored to have as our guest teacher, Mrs. Margaret Pennington, who is with us this evening, who will be covering some of these topics and also additional topics which she feels would be necessary. And I think she's put a message in the chat. If you can look at that chat box for a moment. She has asked everyone for next week's session, do you and your spouse have a favorite love song? If so, please email me the lyrics, just a few lines. If you can send a link to the song, I would also like to listen to it. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our time together next week. Grace and peace to you. That's her email ID. Please take the time to send her your favorite songs, love song, or a link to the song so she can listen to it. She's got something up her sleeve for next week. Margaret, would you like to share anything in preparation?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Yes, just that I'm really looking forward to being with you guys. We've missed being able to be there. It had been a while before COVID and then the world shut down, right? So you all are so very dear to us and we're looking forward to being with you next week. So yes, well, I love all the things that you said, all the guys that shared as well. Awesome stuff. And I look forward to building on that next week. So, thanks so much.
Thank you, Margaret. We look forward to that too. We probably can take one or two questions. If you have anything pressing you want to ask right away, please do. Otherwise, you can send in your questions to Sarah. Is there an email ID up there?
Sorry?
Is there an email ID that we have put on the chat?
No.
Where people can send questions.
Mrs.
Okay.
Pennington has shared her email ID.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can send the questions to that email ID or to...
I will be putting it on the group as well. So if anyone wants to WhatsApp it to me also, that's fine.
Sure, that's perfectly fine as well. If you have any questions right away, we can take it one question perhaps, and then we can close for the evening. Okay, we have Krishnam asking, is there a WhatsApp group? Yes, Krishnam, we have a WhatsApp group. If you can put your number right now, we will send it to that, or we will add you to that WhatsApp group. Sarah will do the needful as well. Okay, you also have a question. Which one is more close to scripture, complementarianism or egalitarianism? I'm towards complementarianism. I also lean in that direction. It's a mixture of both because of the way egalitarianism is being defined, is being redefined in multiple ways. But I think complementary is the best word to use without sacrificing the egalitarian ethos or the whole equality that we really want to teach and implement in our society, especially. So it's both and, but if you look at created order, it's more of a complementary relationship. You're welcome. Thank you so much, all of you, for your participation. It has been very encouraging to see all of you, and we hope that you take this, use it in your family, and please feel free to reach out to many other families who in your contacts are requiring help, assistance to grow their marriage in a healthier way as well. Thank you so much. We will close in prayer. Sarah, can you help in close in prayer, please? Oh, let me, oh, that's Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Sorry, for some reason I wasn't able to unmute myself. Okay, let's just close with a word of prayer and give thanks to God for this wonderful session. Dear loving Father God, we thank you for giving us this wonderful time to listen, Lord, to teachings from your word, real life examples and experiences. And thank you, Lord, for blessing us with all these insights this evening. Lord, help us to take all of these in, process them, and help us to apply them to our lives, Lord. We thank you that you have made it possible for us to have these sessions. We ask that you will continue to bless each and every one who's been a part of this. And we ask that you will help them to join in the coming sessions as well. We ask for your grace as the teaching team and Ms. Pennington prepare for the coming sessions, that we will have a very meaningful and fulfilling time in the weeks to come. We thank you once again for your wonderful grace and your faithfulness to us. In Jesus' most precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening.
Amen. Thank you, Anand. Wonderful.
You're welcome. You're welcome, brother.
Thanks, Anand. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nishant. Thanks for sharing. Thank you for all. Thank you, Nishant. I think Rex has left. McLeod as
You
well.
want
Thank
my
you so much.
marriage experience also, you can have it.
Sure. Why don't we
anytime.
have that then 2 weeks from now?
Thank
We
you,
would love to
thank
hear
you,
from
brother.
you.
Thank you, brother Anand and brother Rex. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Vincent. Thank you. You're welcome.
For you.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Have a good day.
Have a nice week.
You too.
See you tomorrow for church.
Yes, brother Julian. See you tomorrow.
Love you all. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Winnie.